You were taught that if you explain yourself clearly, reasonable people will respect you. You were taught that if you stay calm long enough, they'll finally feel guilty. You were taught that if you endure it quietly, they'll stop. You were taught that being the bigger person is protection. You were taught that your intelligence will save you. You weren't taught the real rule. Your intelligence is exactly what manipulators feed on, because you keep trying to solve what they're doing instead of ending what they're doing. And every time you finally notice the trap, they don't apologize. They flip it. They make you feel dramatic, paranoid, selfish. They make you feel like the problem. So here's the forbidden question you avoid asking because it sounds humiliating. Why do you keep letting the same people manipulate you? Not, why are there manipulators? Not, why are people toxic? Why do you keep giving them access to your nervous system like it's public property? Because you were trained to be emotionally visible, predictable, explainable, reactive, and in power dynamics, emotional visibility is a map to your weak points. You don't need more healing. You need immunity, permanent, boring, repeatable immunity. Notice what he's really saying. This isn't become a manipulator. This is stop being prey. Because the most dangerous manipulator is not the cartoon villain. It's the one close enough to see what moves you. The friend who just wants what's best. The family member who calls you difficult. The co-worker who praises you in public and undermines you in private. The narcissist who studies your empathy like an instruction manual. And here's why manipulators fear calm men. Not because calm men are nice, because calm men are unreadable. Calm men don't leak leverage. Calm men don't negotiate with guilt. Calm men don't deliver the reward of reaction. This video is a system, a set of laws, 7 of them. If you implement them, you don't win arguments. You end the game. You will learn how to become emotionally untouchable without becoming unstable. How to spot manipulation in real time using dark psychology and pattern recognition. How to set boundaries without speeches. How to remove a narcissist's control without a single dramatic move. How to detach so thoroughly that their tactics bounce off you like rain on stone. And by the end, you will understand Machiavelli's darkest secret. He wasn't teaching manipulation. He was teaching immunity. If these ideas resonate with you, hit that subscribe button for more top-tier content. Also, drop a calm power in the comments, so I know you're ready. Let's dive in. You think manipulators control you with strength. They don't. They control you with access. Access to your emotions, access to your need to be understood, access to your reflex to correct unfairness, access to your conscience, access to your memories, access to your self-image as a good person. You don't realize it, but most of your suffering comes from one habit. You keep showing your internal state to people who have not earned the right to see it. You show irritation. They learn what annoys you. You show guilt. They learn what you'll do to stop feeling it. You show confusion. They learn what they can deny. You show pain. They learn what to threaten. You show love. They learn what to hold hostage. This is why your emotional intelligence gets you used, because you treat emotion like truth. They treat emotion like data. So the first law is simple, brutal, and life-changing. Become emotionally invisible to anyone who has ever tried to control you. Not cold to everyone, strategic, precise. You don't need to be rude. You need to be unreadable. Because the manipulator's core weapon is prediction. They predict your response, then they steer you into it. And you help them. You telegraph, you explain, you justify, you defend. You try to resolve tension quickly. You try to clear the air. You try to communicate. But what you call communication in power dynamics is often confession. You are confessing your buttons. So here is the tactical advantage your emotionally reactive competitors will never have. You delay your reaction until their intention becomes obvious. You don't respond on their timeline. You don't answer immediately to prove you're mature. You don't rush to repair what they damaged. You withdraw the most addictive drug in social control, instant emotional access. And this is where they panic. Because when they can't read you, they can't steer you. When they can't steer you, they can't control you. When they can't control you, they can't feed on you. You want to stop being manipulated? Stop being emotionally legible. You become the fog. You become the blank wall their projections can't stick to. You become the calm that makes their chaos obvious. And here's the paradox that rewires you. Your disengagement is your most powerful engagement, because now you're not reacting. You're observing. And once you observe, you start to notice something that should make you angry. Manipulation is not creative. It's repetitive, which means you don't need to be lucky. You need to recognize patterns. Every manipulator uses the same 3 triggers, not sometimes, not maybe, the same 3. First, urgency. Second, guilt. Third, confusion. Urgency is the trap that forces a decision before you can think. They push you into speed because speed kills strategy. They say, we need to talk right now. They say, answer me. They say, why are you ignoring me? They create an emergency out of your boundary. Why? Because if you slow down, you see the structure. If you see the structure, you see the manipulation. So your first move is not to explain. Your first move is to remove urgency. You say less. You move slower. You do not reward pressure with access. Then comes guilt. Guilt is the manipulator's favorite currency because good people pay instantly. You were trained to pay it. You were trained to feel responsible for other people's emotions. You were trained to treat their disappointment like your crime. So they say, after everything I've done for you, I guess I just care more than you do. You've changed. You're selfish. You're cold. You're heartless. You think you're better than us. Listen carefully. These aren't accusations. They are leashes. They are attempts to pull you back into the role where you are manageable. And the third trigger is confusion. Confusion is where narcissists thrive. They contradict themselves. They deny what they said. They change the subject. They reframe. They accuse you of what they did. They create a fog so thick you start doubting your own memory. And because you're intelligent, you try to solve the fog. You replay conversations. You gather evidence. You craft the perfect explanation. You search for the right words. You think, if I can just explain it clearly, they'll understand. No, they understand. They just don't want to lose the advantage. So here's what the fox does. The fox doesn't argue inside the fog. The fox labels the pattern and exits, not with drama, with precision. You start saying things like, I'm not deciding under pressure. I'll respond when I'm ready. That doesn't work on me. I'm not discussing this in this tone. I'm not here to prove what I know happened. Short, flat, non-emotional. And then you do the thing that terrifies manipulators more than anger. You stop participating. You stop trying to win their approval. You stop auditioning for fairness. You stop begging for basic respect like it's a privilege. And now the trap becomes visible, because when you won't react, they escalate. That escalation is your proof. When the mask slips, you don't need more evidence. You need a boundary, but not the kind you've been taught, not the speech, not the long paragraph, not the I feel TED talk that gives them more data. A silent boundary. Most people think boundaries are words. They're not. Boundaries are consequences. A boundary without a consequence is a request. And manipulators don't respect requests. They study them. They treat your boundary like a negotiation opener. They ask why. They ask, what do you mean? They ask, are you seriously doing this? They ask, who told you that? They act confused to make you explain. They act hurt to make you comfort. They act angry to make you retreat. And you, the betrayed intellectual, you fall into the old trap. You think if you explain the boundary well enough, it will become real. No. A boundary becomes real when you enforce it without emotion. Silence is what turns a boundary into steel, because silence denies them the two things they need, your energy and your justification. So the silent boundary principle is this. You do not argue with someone about whether they're allowed to disrespect you. You simply become unavailable to it. They interrupt you. You stop talking and you end the interaction. They raise their voice, you lower yours and you leave. They guilt trip you. You don't defend. You don't counter-guilt. You don't apologize. You withdraw access. They provoke you publicly. You don't perform. You don't set the record straight. You let the silence expose their hunger for attention. And yes, you will feel the itch to explain, the itch to correct, the itch to be seen as fair, the itch to prove you're not what they claim you are. That itch is the addiction they installed in you. The system needs you to believe that being misunderstood is unbearable. Your freedom begins when you can tolerate it. Because manipulators don't fear your anger, they fear your indifference. Anger is engagement. Indifference is eviction. And this is where your mind will resist. You'll think, but if I go silent, they'll think they won. Good. Let them think it. Your goal is not to win the scene. Your goal is to win your life back. Stop for a moment and calculate the energy you waste on people who drain you. Hours of rumination, days of emotional fallout, weeks of second-guessing, years of repeating the same dynamic with different faces. Now imagine a you who refuses to pay that cost. That is what detachment is, a strategic refusal to overpay. And the first place manipulators try to collect payment is guilt. So you need a shield. Guilt is not always conscience. Often guilt is conditioning. You were trained to confuse being good with being available. You were trained to mistake self-abandonment for virtue. So when you start using boundaries, when you start using strategic silence, the manipulator will not argue about facts. They will attack your identity. They will say you're cold. They will say you're selfish. They will say you're arrogant. They will say you're cruel. They will say you're overreacting. They will say you're unstable. Why? Because if they can make you feel like a bad person, they can make you behave like a controllable person again. This is dark psychology in its simplest form. They don't need to win logically. They need to trigger a self-correction reflex inside you. And your reflex is powerful. You want to be fair. You want to be accurate. You want to be good. You want to be seen as reasonable. So they exploit those traits like pressure points. The guilt immunity shield is built from one decision. You stop treating other people's emotions as your responsibility. Their disappointment is not your emergency. Their anger is not your debt. Their sadness is not your sentence. You can be kind without being controllable. You can be respectful without being accessible. You can be calm without being compliant. And here's the sentence that will change your entire nervous system. You do not negotiate your boundaries with guilt. You let guilt rise, you observe it, you breathe, you do not obey it. Because guilt is often just withdrawal symptoms. You are withdrawing from an old addiction, approval. And when you withdraw, the environment screams. Family may say, that's not how we do things. Friends may say, you've changed. Co-workers may say, you're not a team player. A narcissist may say, you're abandoning me. No, you are abandoning the role they assigned you, the role of emotional laborer, the role of mediator, the role of human shock absorber, the role of the one who always understands. You were taught that the highest form of love is sacrifice. Machiavelli would call that a political strategy used against you, because sacrifice without respect is not love, it is extraction. So now you become immune, not by becoming heartless, by becoming precise. You begin to ask one question every time guilt appears. Is this guilt warning me that I violated my values, or warning me that I violated someone else's control? That question alone destroys manipulation. And once guilt fails, the manipulator moves to the next tactic, They try to weaponize your empathy. They try to make you mirror them emotionally, so you need a mirror of your own. The mirror defense strategy is not revenge, it's calibration. Manipulators thrive because you keep giving them what they refuse to give you. You give patience, they give pressure, you give explanation, they give accusation, you give second chances, they give repeated disrespect. You give benefit of the doubt, they give strategic ambiguity, so you stop being asymmetrical. You mirror, but you mirror with control, not their chaos, their structure. If they give you vagueness, you give them vagueness back. If they refuse clarity, you stop offering clarity. If they dodge questions, you stop answering theirs. If they take days to respond, you take days too. If they only contact you when they need something, you become unavailable when they need something. And here's the part that will feel almost illegal at first. You stop overfunctioning. You stop carrying conversations. You stop fixing misunderstandings. You stop smoothing tension. You stop doing the emotional paperwork, because overfunctioning is how you signal, I can be pushed. The mirror is how you signal, I cannot be pushed. Now, some people will adjust. Healthy people will notice and meet you in the middle. They'll say, I see I crossed a line. They'll repair. Manipulators won't. Manipulators will escalate because they don't want a relationship. They want a position. And the moment you stop feeding their position, they reveal their true goal: control. This is why calm men are feared. Calm men don't get pulled into emotional theater. Calm men don't plead their case. Calm men don't chase. Calm men don't over-explain. Calm men don't broadcast their insecurities. Calm men observe the pattern, name it internally, and move. But there is a final trap you must avoid if you want permanent manipulation immunity. The trap of closure. The trap of one last conversation. That is where most intelligent people lose, because you crave a clean ending. Manipulators use that craving like a key, so you need the rule that ends them. The exit without explanation. Rule is what separates the emotionally reactive victim from the untouchable strategist. You have to understand this. Manipulators do not want communication. They want contact. Any contact. A paragraph is contact, a voice note is contact, a debate is contact, a breakdown is contact, an apology is contact, a final message is contact. Even your attempt to end things can become the last meal you feed them. So the rule is cold and simple. When the pattern is clear, you exit without explaining. You do not present evidence. You do not argue about intent. You do not list the reasons. You do not deliver a closing statement that gives them hooks to respond to. You leave. And yes, your mind will protest. You'll think, but I want them to understand. They understand. You'll think, but I want to be fair. Fairness is not required to survive a predator. You'll think, but I don't want to seem harsh. Harshness is not the issue. Access is. You'll think, but what will they say about me? They will say whatever serves them. They will call you cold because it pressures you to be warm again. They will call you selfish because it pressures you to be available again. They will call you manipulative because it pressures you to defend again. You don't defend. You let them talk to the version of you that no longer exists, because the most powerful boundary is the one you do not announce. It is the one you enforce quietly. This is where social dominance is actually built. Not with aggression, with control. Control over your attention. Control over your time, control over your access, control over your emotional output. You become strategically boring to the wrong people, and to the right people, you become magnetic, because you are no longer desperate to be understood. You are no longer begging for reciprocity. You are no longer performing goodness to earn safety. You become a man who can walk away, and anyone who can walk away is hard to control. But to make this permanent, you need more than tactics. You need a code, a mindset that becomes your default operating system. Permanent manipulation immunity comes from one internal shift. You stop seeing social interactions as emotional events. You start seeing them as power dynamics, not in a paranoid way, in a precise way. You watch for leverage. You watch for patterns. You watch for incentives. You watch for who benefits from your confusion. You watch for who becomes angry when you become calm. You watch for who punishes you when you set boundaries, and you stop romanticizing people's intentions. You were taught that judging is evil, but strategic thinking requires discernment. Discernment is not hatred. Discernment is survival. So here is the untouchable mindset code, carved into 7 statements you will live by. You do not react. You assess. You do not explain. You enforce. You do not chase. You withdraw. You do not negotiate with guilt. You observe it. You do not argue in fog. You exit it. You do not feed disrespect. You remove access. You do not fear being misunderstood. You fear being controlled. Now ask yourself, how many times have you stayed in a dynamic because you wanted to be the mature one? How many times have you tolerated disrespect because you didn't want to make a big deal? How many times have you tried to earn basic decency with patience? And how many times did that patience get rewarded with more disrespect? This is the lie you must burn out of your system. You were taught that kindness makes you safe. In the world of manipulation, kindness without boundaries makes you accessible, and accessibility is what predators exploit. So, weaponized detachment is not cruelty. It is the strategic decision to remove your inner world from the marketplace. Your psyche becomes a silent fortress. Your attention becomes a strategic resource to be withdrawn. Your calm becomes a weapon, because the moment you stop reacting, the moment you stop proving, the moment you stop explaining, they lose the steering wheel, and you regain something you've been missing your whole life: control. Not control over them, control over you. This is why the calm man is feared, because he is not emotionally available for conquest. He is not psychologically rentable. He cannot be baited into performing. He cannot be trapped into over-explaining. He is not a public utility. He is sovereign. So let's finish where we started, with the forbidden question. Why do you keep letting the same people manipulate you? Because you kept trying to win morally inside a game they were playing strategically. Now you switch games. You become the fox who recognizes traps. You become the lion who frightens wolves. You become the man who does not need to be believed to be dangerous. You become the man who does not need to be liked to be free. And if you want to lock this into your identity, make it public. Drop calm power in the comments again. Yes, again, because repetition is ritual, and ritual is how you reprogram yourself. And subscribe if you're ready for a world where your emotional intelligence stops being your weakness and becomes your weapon. Because the next time someone tries to manipulate you, you won't fight them, you won't beg, you won't explain. You'll do something far worse for them. You'll go calm, you'll go silent, you'll leave. And whatever you do, don't stop now. The on-screen video matters more than you think. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. I'll see you there. See what others miss. Know what others fear. Become who others can't.